As I've often said in reviewing horror movies, beyond, of course, absolute fear, is the ultimate horror is sadness, in that it's not just the fear of your self-preservation and whatnot, and fear of your own demise or suffering. It's the suffering of loss, the suffering of a loved one who's, the evil force, the monster, what have you, is going to take away your loved one and that sort of thing. And in a lot of ways, such is the case with Wolfman, the latest iteration of this, owing more, I think just about all of them, to the Wolfman, the original Universal with Lon Chaney Jr. And I haven't seen them all. And now that I've seen this one, I'm thinking, I need to go back and catch up on some of the others that were recently done. Not that long ago, really. But this one, when it was first announced, I was like, gee, I hope they can really nail it, I don't think they did. I'd heard really bad reviews about this one, and in some aspects of it, in its aesthetics of basically how the werewolf looks, or werewolves rather, I have to agree, it's pretty bad. It didn't do it. It's basically the werewolves look like guys with really bad underbites and thinning hair. That's it's referred to as body horror, and there are elements of that, but when it comes to body horror, Substance, the recent did that very well. That's the whole thing, really, of it. And then, of course, you can go to The Fly with Jeff Goldblum. That whole disintegration of that man. And there's aspects of it here, but it's rather brief and compared to those. There are some interesting elements here in that you get a view of this man who is infected with werewolfism, I suppose, which, yes, was not the original lore, but for Universal, it is. It's more or less that's what happens. There's nothing, any mention of the supernatural here, which is, more of the original take of Wolfman. But I suppose if there were to be a follow-up, you could add to it and say it was, but for the most part, there's no real explanation. It's just this happened in these woods, and there's apparently a long-winded legacy of this as it unfolds, but that's about it. And the main thing, and there's some elements of that I can appreciate, that it's just this very small family, they're thrown into this, it happens to them, and the movie reaches its conclusion. Keeping it small and simple, there's a lot you can do with that, and I appreciate the effort. I wasn't that moved to it in total. There was some good moments here and there, but the main thing was the eye view of the man turning into the werewolf, and you can see how it happens, because a lot of times with these people turning into monsters, and that they're forced to become a danger to their loved ones, which is part of the horror that they're experiencing, not just that, oh my god, I'm turning into this thing, but it's that you become the evil, you become a threat to your family. But you see how he's changing, not just in his physical appearance, but his ability to even understand the outside world. And there's quite a few. It's sprinkled throughout. They don't dwell on it, where he's running around and you're seeing his eye view, chasing and all that. It's brief enough, and I think it's well done. I think they captured that, and they kept it at the minimum that was necessary to get the point across. And also, when he starts to really become the big bad wolf towards the end of the film. So there's there were some criticisms on it, and I can see what people were thinking about that fatherhood is being criticized here. I'm not entirely certain, having seen it performed, if that's maybe some were seeing it that way. But the scenes interacting, you jump some years. The opening scene which it's not bad. It's pretty good. You got this father and son going on a hunting trip, and it's obvious they're stalked by a werewolf. And that sets it up. The son grows up. Now he's a father of a daughter and all that, and there's some problems within the marriage. So he finds out that his father's been declared dead. He went missing, and he's going to go take care of his father's property. So he's going back, and he and his father lived in this, wooded area, very isolated and all that. So he goes, and of course they're going to encounter the wolf and all that. But the business was the father was very strict, and scolds the young boy, who wanders off during the hunting trip, and he's explaining how dangerous that is. Well, that's responsible thing for the father to do. So, but it's performed that way. Now later, as he's an adult, he's feeling guilt about the official notice that his father is now declared dead, and but that he grew up being afraid of his father, and they grew apart, and he hadn't spoken to him, and then suddenly he turns up missing and all this. So he's, the part of the remorse for him with his daughter. There's a scene where he does the same thing. He yells at her because she's being foolish and could have gotten herself hurt and all that. But he's trying to rein that in. Now, it's the metaphor of the beast within, of anger and raw energy and all that sort of stuff that, of course, takes over when he becomes the wolf. But those scenarios is he's protecting the girl, and throughout the story, even when he's the wolf, he's still vying to protect the family, and that plays out, which adds more to the sad scenario of it all. I mean, he really didn't deserve what happens to him, and that's the sad thing about it. There's another scene where there's a bit of not an outright fight, but a disagreement between him and his wife. And I don't know. I think it portrayed him as being on point and her being a bit snotty. But it's rather bland and quick. But he's saying, I think there's a problem. And the problem is he's not working. She is. So, there's that. But anyway, they go on this trip to deal with the property, and of course that's when the real horror takes place and all that. And then there's a big reveal towards the end. I won't spoil it, but you can see it coming a mile away. So essentially, throughout the movie, there's 3 werewolves. There's your main character who becomes the wolf, and you see how you watch him become the wolf, such that he never really becomes one. He's just got a severe underbite. His nose changes a bit. His hair falls out. Usually with werewolf, the hair grows. You see that, like the bald guy, and his hair grows back. Hey, there's one plus for your werewolfism. And then there's 2 others. You don't get much of a view of the wolf at the beginning. It's in the past. Then there's a second wolf stalking the family, which also scratches him. He becomes the 3rd wolf, basically, through this. And so that's how that plays out. But I don't know. It really didn't impact me as Nosferatu was better, even though, of course, most people's opinion, it appears, it dropped the ball because the depiction of Nosferatu, even though I understood what they were doing, that's pretty much what the character would look like, because it's called Nosferatu, but it's Dracula, and that's the era that he came from, and he would look like that. But whatever. I don't know. They found a narrative within it and its visuals and whatnot to achieve something, Whereas here, the plot points are there, and that I think this is more of a sad movie than horror. There's horror there, the monsters after them, they're scared and all that. But I don't know, it just didn't grab me enough, and not enough between them all. I mean, there's more relationship between the daughter and the father than the father and the wife, you know. Although, you know, she has her moments where she feels like she's distant from the daughter because she's in the role of breadwinner while he's at home. And of course, that's what happens, you know. So the girl relates more to the father. She spends more time with him and all that. But anyway, I can't say it's a movie that would piss anybody off. Some people were really upset with it, and that it just didn't excite them more. But was it worth the $20 to rent it on Amazon? No, it isn't. And you can wait for this to come out on whatever streaming services you're subscribed to. It'll probably pop up there, Netflix or something, I assume, and probably Amazon Prime. You know, but that's, you know, that'd be good enough. It does have some interesting attempts, but I don't think it really got there. And most of all, it's the look of the werewolf. You gotta up the ante on that, and they really didn't. So there you go. I saw the film, and I tried not to spoil too many things here, even though it's mostly predictable, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, and I don't think it was a bad thing here. It's just, there just wasn't a whole lot going for it overall, and that's unfortunate. I was hoping it would be much better than it was, but I guess the expectations were too high. See, lowered expectations can help a movie. Make it seem better than it is, but and then the opposite could be true, I suppose. But yeah, hopefully somebody will come up with a better werewolf movie. But anyway, I don't think it's this one.